Well, a warm welcome to today's talk. It's Wednesday the 14th of April. Now, some good news today and some not so good news. Let's just start off with a bit of a resume of the English-speaking countries in terms of cases. So, obviously New Zealand, Australia, very low. United Kingdom going down but somewhat flattened out. Now, this is the United States here. So slight up increase in the United States. And this is the Canadian line here. So from being low, Canada is definitely going upwards in terms of cases. And we know that's new variant driven. Now, just what's hopefully a glance into the future, the Israeli situation. So we see that this is COVID-19 doses administered per 100 people. So not yet the whole population had 2 doses by any means. But if we look at when the number of vaccines increased, January, February, March there, then we look at the number of cases. January, February, we see that the cases started going down quite dramatically. So that's a good indicator. And if we look at deaths, then likewise they started to fall as well. So Israel is somewhat of the vaccination fig tree, that which denotes the seasons. So that's fairly hopeful. But having said that, the Prime Minister was in the UK was on TV yesterday, very keen to point out that most of the reduction that we're now enjoying is as a result of lockdown, and it's only just now becoming as a result of vaccination. And of course, going on to vaccination, the main issue at the moment is this, or the main thing to talk about really, is this joint CDC declaration. Now, we actually have it here. This is it. I've put the link in, you can read it for yourself. Joint CDC and Food and Drug Administration statement on Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. And there's a bit of useful detail there. So let me give you the bones of this. Now, this is cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, that are these rare blood clots. The same type of blood clots that have been reported with the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine. Also an adenovirus vector vaccine, of course. And all we can really say is there seems to be some sort of immune response. The details of that certainly haven't been made public yet. Now, in the United States, from the rollout of the Janssen, Johnson & Johnson vaccine specifically, there's been 6 cases of this from 6.8 million doses of vaccine. So we can see that there's about 1 case per 1.2 million doses of vaccine. This is a remarkably rare correlation, potential side effect. And it's a good idea if people look out for severe headache after vaccination, because that could indicate the blood clots in the cerebral sinus veins. Abdominal pain's a possibility because you can get blood clots in other parts of the body. Now, it's looking like all the blood clots reported in this US cohort are in the cerebral sinus veins, but there are reports from other parts of the world with other adenovirus vector vaccines of blood clots in other parts of the body. Leg pain could indicate blood clots in the leg, deep venous thrombosis. But this doesn't really seem to be the sort of clot that's a problem. But of course, it's still worth reporting to your medical care provider if you get such a pain. Or shortness of breath would indicate that the clot has spread from the leg into the lungs potentially. Within 3 weeks of vaccination is what they're saying. But this particular problem seems to be cerebral venous sinus thrombosis together with the low platelets, this thrombocytopenia that's been noticed in the European and UK data from the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine. Now, we still can't say this is definite yet. This is remarkably rare, but the joint CDC and FDA have suspended the rollout of the Janssen, Johnson & Johnson for this reason. Now, A.Offit, a vaccine specialist, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, he thinks it's the prudent thing to do, despite it being remarkably low numbers. I think it's real. So what he seems to be saying here is he thinks that this is a real effect, a real complication of the vaccine, despite being phenomenally rare. He seems to think it's real and not just a random association that's cropped up. Time will tell, but that seems to be what he's saying at the moment. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices meets today. So we're expecting the US authorities to move quickly on this, and they're meeting today. And the European Medicines Agency is also investigating delaying the European rollout. So there's no two ways about it. This is delaying vaccine rollouts. Now, the authorities in the States are very keen to stress that this is not a significant part of their vaccine rollout, because the Pfizer and the Moderna are still the main workhorses of that. But of course, it's not going to help either. And we have seen that slight increase in cases in the United States, which we'd much more happily do without. Jane Woodcock, Acting Commissioner, Food and Drug Administration. The reason for the pause is health professionals must know not to use heparin, she says. Now, the background here is when we have venothromboembolism or thromboembolic disease, very often we use this drug called heparin. And heparin is an anticoagulant. So if you have a clot that's forming, that's the thrombus. Now, when you give heparin, the anticoagulant, it won't break down the clot, but it will stop the clot getting any bigger. But the body has its own mechanisms for breaking down the clot based on the enzyme called plasmin. If you want to break down the clot, you have to give another group of drugs. But heparin will prevent the clot getting bigger and allow the body's own mechanisms to break down the clot. So heparin is an absolutely standard of care in thrombus conditions, but it seems it's the wrong thing to do in this condition. So that's what she's concerned about. They have to educate health care professionals not to use heparin if it's this specific thromboembolic disease. In all 6 cases in the States, the venous sinus thrombus in combination with the low platelets, in combination with thrombocytopenia, is what she's saying. Now, all 6 cases in the United States occurred among women aged 18 to 48. Interesting. Now, this is basically premenopausal women, isn't it? So they were all 6 cases. They were all 6 to 13 days after vaccination. Of the 6, there's been tragically 1 death. 1 person is still critical to have been discharged from hospital, and the person in critical condition was reportedly, we don't know this definitely, but was reportedly given heparin. Now, what may have happened here is if there's a blood clot in these cerebral sinus veins, then the blood can't get back from the veins in the head down into the jugular veins in the neck. So the blood dams back. And the blood dams back into the small vessels in the brain, the capillaries. And of course, as the blood dams back, that's going to increase the pressure in these capillaries, stretching them and causing some cerebral hemorrhage, some capillary hemorrhage. That's what seems to have been happening. We don't know for sure, but this is what makes sense. So it's the backlog from the blood clot that increases the pressure in the cerebral capillaries, and that can cause the bleeding. And if heparin has been given, of course, that would make the hemorrhage much worse. That seems to be the problem, reading between the lines here. Peter Marks, director of the FDA's Centre for Biologics Evaluation and Research, he says he hesitates to call this a class effect. Now, what he means there is an effect of the adenovirus vector vaccines. So he hesitates to call it a class effect. So he's basically saying he's not sure. Is he saying he thinks it might be? I don't know. That's a direct quote. He hesitates. He says he hesitates to call it a class effect. But he said it's plainly obvious to us that what we are seeing with the Janssen vaccine looks very similar to what is being seen with the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. So he clearly has his suspicions. But I think we have to remember just how rare this is. 1 case in 1.2 million people. This is phenomenally rare. Now, going on with this thinking here, the AstraZeneca vaccine, of course, is a chimpanzee adenovirus vector. The Janssen's a human adenovirus vector. So the commonality there is the adenovirus vector. Now, is there one particular thing in these vaccines that seems to be causing this, albeit remarkably rare problem? Well, the vaccine developers are surely working on that now and thinking about that now. I can't make some broad statement yet, but obviously they are from the same general class of viral vectors. And that was from Peter Marks, director of the FDA's biologics, whatever it was, biologics evaluation and research department. Now, scale of the problem, is this going to matter? Well, the Janssen vaccine was going to be 100 million doses in the US by the end of May. But we'll find out today what's happening. They can produce 1 billion doses globally by the end of the year. It's agreed to sell 500 million doses to developing nations under the COVAX purchasing agreement, and agreed to sell 400 million via an organisation of African countries. So yeah, this would be massive. What I think may happen is the CDC and FDA may say they're not going to give this to women under the age of, who knows, 50, 60. We don't know. We'll find out what they say today. So far, remember, it's all women that have been affected, so it's looking like it's safe for men. But more to come. So it's a hiccup, but it's remarkably rare. But of course, for those involved, it's completely tragic. But there again, the consequences of severe COVID-19 can be, are completely tragic for many as well. Now, thinking about other parts of the world, Turkey, cases up quite dramatically. Over 4 million officially diagnosed cases now, but the real number will be high because we never diagnose everyone, of course. Now, these are the new daily cases in Turkey. So we see that this is taking up to us to April 2021. So it's fairly up to date. So we had that increase there. That was November, December time. And now there's no question that there's a great increase in cases in Turkey. That's a definite, very definite trend there in Turkey, unfortunately. Deaths in Turkey. Another 273 deaths, taking it up to 34,455. President Erdogan has announced partial closures, including restrictions on the breaking of the fast for Ramadan. The majority Muslim population, of course, in Turkey, and Ramadan started yesterday, I think. Yes, the 13th of April, Ramadan started. So important cultural implications there in Turkey, and it looks like this legislation has been, or these rules have been instigated that will interfere, unfortunately, with the cultural activity of millions of people. And as we've said, this is a price that does often have to be paid in this pandemic. And of course, millions of Christians couldn't go to church at Easter time, which of course is of immense importance in the Christian calendar. So these things aren't good, but it's the way it is. President Erdogan has come under quite a lot of criticism from medical authorities and medical staff in his country, but does seem to be acting more now. Anyway, that was definite increase in Turkey, unfortunately. France, likewise, another country that's increasing quite dramatically in cases. Another 40,000 cases almost in the last 24 hours. Now, the French authorities are saying there was an extra 324 deaths in hospital. Basically, 100,000 people have now died in France. They don't seem to quote the figures for the community, so quite what the overall death figures in France aren't entirely clear at the moment, from what I've looked at anyway. Intensive care, though, is is beyond capacity in some areas, and indicates the severe stretch in the hospital system. Now, the 1 month lockdown in place since the end of March, so they're like two weeks into this lockdown now. And are we seeing a change in the cases in France? Well, I think we probably are. So these were the cases going up. And is it looking like there's a slight downturn now that these figures are taken up to the 10th of April as an effect of the lockdown in France? Hopefully. Vaccine is being rolled out in France, but much, much slower than anyone would want. Now, I read on the news that France will be suspending all flights to and from Brazil. And my reaction to that was, what? They're still flying out of Brazil as we speak. So this is a plan to suspend flights from Brazil. This is really quite lack of proactivity. We need to move from reactivity to proactivity. And the idea that there were still flights flying from Brazil to France is just unconscionable. But that does appear to have been the case, and is now. But they are planning to stop it. So perhaps better to bolt the stable door after the horse is bolted, but than not at all. But not impressive, really, to be quite honest. Sweden, AstraZeneca has now been given to the over 65s. Johnson & Johnson vaccine arriving this week, and there's been quite a dramatic, I haven't put the graph up, but there's been quite a dramatic increase. I think Sweden is now the highest, apart from Andorra, I think Sweden is now the highest growth rate and infection rate in Europe. So difficult time in Sweden as well. And of course, this is going to carry on having implications for healthcare for weeks and if not a month or two to come. Russia, likewise, a lot of cases still in Russia. But manufacturing of Sputnik vaccine soon in India. So they're going to start manufacturing Sputnik vaccine in India, 50 million per month. And they're going to start manufacturing it in Serbia, Iran and Italy. And we know it's being rolled out already in Russia. But of course, the Sputnik vaccine is an adenovirus vector. So is there more to come on that story? Possibly. Is there more to come on the side effects and complications of other vaccines? Well, probably. But as we saw from the Israeli data, the vaccination program is having tremendous effect, and it is completely essential that we carry on with this. And the government, of course, is saying, come forward for your vaccine when called, which I will certainly be doing for my second dose. I'm just waiting for the phone call, and I'll be round like a shot as soon as I get the opportunity for it. Not saying we don't need therapeutics. Of course we need therapeutics as well. It'd be great to have both. Now, where am I? India. Now, you've probably seen these pictures of the Kumbh Mela, this huge festival they have, a Hindu-based festival in India. So whereas Christians didn't go to church for Easter, Muslims are limiting their breaking fast meal. In Turkey, the Kumbh Mela has just carried on, unfortunately, in India. It would be, to be fair on the Indian authorities, it would be remarkably difficult to stop. Apparently 3 million people were in the Ganges at some point yesterday. 5 to 10 million attending. It's the world's biggest religious festivals. Now, the pictures you see on the news are all outdoors, so that doesn't concern me. Well, it's crowding. It's not good, of course. But the point is, a lot of these people are not staying in. A lot of people don't have a lot of money. They're staying in. Well, the hotels just become completely crammed, and there's probably people sleeping many to a room, which would be the main problem, and of course sharing toilet facilities, which is probably the main part of the problem in India. The crowded living accommodation indoors. But if we look at the graphics for India at the moment, I'm afraid that was the first wave, August, September, October. And now we see this dramatic increase, unfortunately. So, concerned about India, absolutely. India approved Sputnik vaccine a couple of days ago on Monday. Now, for the UK, surge testing in South London, Lambeth and Wandsworth. 656,000 population. Testing's available for all. PCR testing is available for all. Symptomatic and asymptomatic. Everyone been encouraged to come forward where they live, work or travel in the borough because there's been an outbreak of the South Africa variant. We really do not want this. It's called the EEC mutation because it looks a bit like an EEC. It's the E amino acid has been transposed at the 484th position to the K amino acid. And this does seem to reduce the efficacy of the AstraZeneca vaccine. That's based on a study in South Africa of relatively small numbers. So how big an effect that is, we don't really know yet. But it still does seem to protect against severe disease, which is remarkably good news. and it does not seem to outcompete the UK variant. Now, the UK variant is very transmissible, so that's not really saying much, but it doesn't seem to outcompete the UK variant, so no particular reason why it should spread around the country. And AstraZeneca are making a third shot for later this year, perhaps going to be given in September, which takes account of the South Africa variant. Okay. Now, my voice has gone, so I think I'm going to leave it there for today. I did have some other things to tell you, but I'm still recovering from this, whatever it was. So I'll keep what I was going to tell you. You can click on it if you like. It's called Who Are These Guys? And it is pretty amazing stuff, but we'll comment on that tomorrow. So thank you for watching today.